Thank you very much, Senator Bruno. Senator Mullin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the witnesses that are here. I just find it the irony of us talking about what we need to do to get a workforce going, and from a guy that's owned multiple trade companies. I mean, we incentivize in Congress, we incentivize people to stay home. They can work the system. I mean, here we're legalizing drugs, marijuana for medical purposes, and we're incentivizing kids to get a medical card to smoke marijuana in high school at 18 years old, and they can't pass a drug test to get hired by DOD to begin with. I mean, we do it to ourselves here in Congress. If we want to really get our workforce going, then we need to incentivize people to work, not have an excuse to stay home. And we have a program that gives the people a helping hand, but we won't give them a helping hand to push them into the workforce either. We'd like to get a helping hand. You stay on a platform, and then you disincentivize them to be able to step up. I've had hundreds of employees that refuse a raise over the years that I have been self-employed because they can't afford to take the raise, because if they take this raise to $18 an hour, they lose these benefits. And if you can't take a raise to $18 an hour and do that job, you're never going to be able to get the job that can do $30 an hour, because the ladder stops at that point. It's our fault. And so if we in Congress want to get serious about the workforce, then we need to figure out how we incentivize people to get into the workforce. That means we need to push them into the workforce, not allow them to become dependents of the state. And that's exactly what we have. We have 3 generations now of people that are dependent on the state. But that's me ranting. I'll stop. And I will move on to actually my questions. Dr. Larkwood, I would like to start with you. As the largest maintenance, repair, and overhaul facility in the world, which is at Tinker Air Force Base, we have a huge number of civilian employees, around 16,000. Most of these employees are wage grade maintainers, and many have decades of experience. We have received reports that the DLA, which is the Defense Logistic Agency, is increasingly relying on contractors to do these kinds of jobs at other sites. Are you familiar with this?
Yes.
Okay, with a follow-up question on that, then, when using contractors instead of government employees, what are the vetting requirements for bringing them in on our bases?
It's my understanding that, like other workers on military facilities, that they must pass a background investigation.
Are we concerned about moving that direction with contractors instead of having our own contractors or our own employees working for the Department of Defense in the civilian capacity, relying more on that?
I will note that the use of contractors in general is very costly to the department. In many cases, the department is paying a heavy premium for the use of contractors. So rather than necessarily take the expedient route of simply contracting out for that additional labor support, I would encourage instead the department to correctly align incentives for the management of its own civilian personnel.
Is it, I mean, because we are paying a much higher price to have outside contractors. And so if we can pay that wage for outside contractors, what is it that's keeping our government, us, from upping the wages of individuals? Because we're literally losing employee contractors at Tinker because they're getting picked off by outside industries that's give them a $10,000 sign-on bonus, and then we're turning back around and hiring them as contractors to come back in and work on the base for an exuberant amount more.
You are absolutely correct.
So what do we need to do to change that here in Congress?
Right. I'll note that currently the Department of Defense does not have the salary flexibilities that it needs in order to pay workers a going wage. It is bound to the federal wage schedule, which has been superseded several times by statute, creating great distortions in that wage that's actually offered to workers on the ground. Furthermore, the structures that surround civilian hiring are cumbersome, and it's very difficult for civilian employees of the department, civilian managers, to actually manage that workforce effectively. Dealing with contractors is far simpler. If you need to dismiss someone for underperformance, you can do that immediately. You don't need to justify it. You don't need to go through a year's worth of write-ups and large paper trail, and your job will not be in any way threatened by spurious complaints to the Inspector General. So as a result of this, the use of contractors is very expedient, but incredibly costly to the taxpayer.
But I agree with that. We also need to talk about direct hiring, which we've done this in McAllister Ammunition Plant, which is, Mr. Taylor, I was going to ask you about that, because onboarding also takes forever to bring them on. People aren't going to wait 6 months for a job to onboard on going through the process. So direct hiring is important. But going back to this, and I'll wrap it up real quick, Mr. Chairman, if we're not saving us $1 by keeping our wages down, it's costing us, because all we're doing is gaming the system by going out and hiring contractors to come in and do the same job because it's faster, but actually it's because we need the workforce. So we here in Congress really need to start looking at the wages that we're paying and get on scale to what it is today. I mean, look at how much wages have increased in the last 4 years. I mean, it is astronomically, right? And we haven't actually adjusted our pay wage at a serious look to keep up with inflation, especially with inflation being at 17%. We haven't been able to actually adjust that in over 2 decades almost.
That's absolutely correct. The federal wage system is an antiquated relic of the 70s, where we set wages in specific bins, binding occupations together that no longer bear any relation to one another. Furthermore, we apply this antiquated methodology to an unrepresentative set of data that is currently collected by the Department of Defense, completely redundant in my personal opinion, to that already collected by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which conducts a much larger and comprehensive survey of all American professions.
Thank you. Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, sorry about going over time.
Thank you very much, Senator Mullin. Senator Shaheen, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.